Imagine this. You are falling from 10,000 feet, straight into the heart of the Amazon jungle. You are alone. You are a 17-year-old girl, injured, with no food and no equipment. Your chances of survival are zero. But this is how the incredible story of Juliane Koepcke begins.
December 24th, 1971, Christmas Eve. A passenger plane from the Peruvian airline LANSA took off from the capital, Lima, heading for the city of Pucallpa. On board were 92 people, including 17-year-old Juliane Koepcke and her mother. They were hurrying to join her father, a renowned zoologist, to celebrate Christmas together at his research station in the jungle. Her father had begged them not to fly with LANSA. The airline had a dreadful reputation, but the desire to spend the holiday together as a family was stronger than the warnings. About half an hour into the flight, the plane flew into a massive thunderstorm. Though it was the middle of the day, the world outside the windows turned pitch black. The aircraft began to shake violently. Instead of avoiding the danger, the pilot made a fatal decision to fly straight through the storm. Suddenly, a blinding flash, a bolt of lightning struck the right wing. The last words Juliane heard her mother say were, "This is the end." The plane disintegrated thousands of feet in the air. Juliane, still strapped to her row of seats, found herself in free fall. The roar of engines and screams were instantly replaced by the whistling of the wind and complete silence. The jungle below looked like, in her words, heads of broccoli. And then, darkness.
She woke up nearly a day later. All around her was the impenetrable jungle and the wreckage of the plane. Juliane had a severe concussion, a broken collarbone, deep gashes, and a fractured bone in her leg. She had lost her glasses and one of her sandals. For the first few days, drifting in and out of consciousness, she crawled around, trying to find other survivors. But there were none. She was completely alone. Rescue helicopters circled high above, but the dense jungle canopy made her invisible. Soon, the sounds disappeared. After 10 days, the search was called off. All 92 people on board were declared dead. Juliane realized that her survival was now in her own hands. And then she remembered her father's advice from her childhood. If you ever get lost in the jungle, follow the water. A small stream will lead to a bigger one. A bigger one will lead to a river, and you will always find people on a river. By sheer luck, she found a small spring. It became her only hope. Her journey was filled with danger. Thanks to her life in the jungle, she knew the main threat in the water wasn't piranhas or crocodiles, but small freshwater stingrays whose sting could be fatal. With one foot bare, she had to constantly probe the sandy bottom with a stick. Her only food was a small bag of candy she had found at the crash site.
But the most horrific trial wasn't the predators or the hunger. The open wound on her shoulder had become infested with maggots from blowflies. They were literally eating into her flesh, causing unbearable pain. She tried to dig them out with her broken ring, but it was no use. The pain, the weakness, the despair, it felt like the end. But then she heard the familiar calls of birds. They were hoatzin birds. Juliane knew they always lived near large bodies of water. She changed her course, pushing through the undergrowth, and soon reached a river. The river was already wide, making it impossible to walk along the bank. She was so weak she could barely stand. So Juliane made a risky decision. She lay back in the water and let the current carry her. Crocodiles swam around her, but she knew there were more dangers on land. Day after day, she floated down the river, surrounded by predators, trusting her life to the water.
On the 10th day of her journey, she saw a boat. At first, she thought it was a hallucination, but when she touched it, she knew it was real. Mustering her last bit of strength, it took her hours to crawl up a small path where she found a small hut. It was empty, but inside was a canister of gasoline. And then she remembered something her father had done to treat their dog for the same maggot infestation. He had cleaned the wound with kerosene. Juliane poured gasoline into her wound. The pain was excruciating, but the maggots began to crawl out. She managed to pull out more than 30 of them. The next morning, she heard voices that sounded like the singing of angels. They were local lumberjacks. At first, they mistook the blonde, blood-caked girl for a forest spirit and almost ran away. But Juliane spoke to them in Spanish, which she had known since childhood, and explained who she was. Her 10-day ordeal was over. She was saved.
But how did she survive the fall in the first place? The row of seats she was strapped to acted like a maple seed or a helicopter rotor, spinning and slowing her descent. Powerful updrafts within the thunderstorm also acted as a brake. Finally, the thick canopy of trees and vines cushioned the final impact. However, if the fall was a miracle, her survival was entirely her own achievement. The knowledge from her childhood, combined with unbelievable courage and determination, allowed a 17-year-old girl to do the impossible. Juliane's story became a global sensation. Movies were made about it, often ridiculous ones with fictional attacks by leopards and giant snakes. But the most incredible chapter of this story came in 1998. The famous German director Werner Herzog found her. He revealed that he was supposed to be on her exact flight back in 1971, but canceled his ticket at the last minute. Together, they returned to the crash site and made a documentary film, Wings of Hope. Juliane Koepcke's story is more than just a tale of survival. It is a testament to the human will, to knowledge, and to incredible courage. It's a story that reminds us in our darkest times, never lose hope and never give up. Thank you for watching. Take care.